Sergio, I was interesting. I was going through Luigi, the French-Italian master. So you actually were his student.
Yes, yes.
Oh, wow, yes. Wow. So I'm looking forward to hearing. Were you going to talk about him today, or the?
Yes, yeah. I'm going to start with him, and I'm going to share my screen because I have to him pretty much of what I am in the architecture field, and what's important to me on Liberland is the concept, and I got this concept by him, and so I was telling he's an hidden treasure because he's not really that well known. He's quite well known to few here in Italy, but not as much as I think he should be. And so I'm gonna show you some of his fantasy drawings. They're drawings starting by the early 1960s through the end of the 90s. And what comes out of these drawings is effort to build a different habitat and to find a different place for man on the planet. He was often talking about the crisis of anthropocentrism. We are used to see the man of Leonardo da Vinci, the man from Vitruvius, and we used to be thinking that we were the center of the universe. But then we started seeing the Earth from a different point in space. We've seen the Earth from the Moon as a species, and this gave a completely different idea of the place of man. Man was not the center of the universe. Man is just a part of the universe. Let's go back to his drawings. He had this vision for trying to raise the place of the man above the ground. So you see, this one is from the Earth as a root. This is taken from a series of drawing called "The Earth as a Root, Not as Support," meaning that the habitat must come out of the Earth, and envisioned those floating cities and space free on the ground. And what's really interesting to me in Liberland is Liberand motto. Liberand motto is to live and let live, and I think that we should think about the motto not just as live and let live between men, but live and let live between species, meaning that we have to find a way to deal how we inhabit the earth with animals and plants, and we are not alone. And this closes a series of his drawings, and it's the idea of a microstructure circling the earth. And so we came up with this idea for the competition with this mega structure floating high above the ground and leaving the soil as undisturbed as possible. And we imagined a place where actually you had these pillars touching down, and then the rest was just free. You can see in the city plan the the ground level is just left untouched. And well, actually, I've read that the requirement for this competition that we are going through this year are a bit different about inhabitants. The 2015 competition was covering 350,000 inhabitants, and now it's 120,000 inhabitants, so it's probably easier. It was quite a tough task to have all these people fit in one place, which is quite small, because you have a 7 square meter surface of land. And so we came out with this idea of tubes resting one above the other, and with different sections and different parts according to functions. And we also planned a way to move inside by rapid transit in order to avoid as much as possible the use of cars, because in terms of energy, what we were trying to find was a completely almost complete self-efficiency. So all the outside surfaces were clad with photovoltaics, and we also used geothermal, which we used quite much in Italy in several of our projects, and biomass and hydroelectric and district heating. And if we go back for a moment to Luigi Pellegrin, his lesson was for organic architecture, and he'd been working for Paul Rudolph. He was very close to Bruno Zevi, the architectural critic, who was very important at the world of World War II, when he contributed to make quite popular the figure of Frank Lloyd Wright in Europe and in Italy. But Luigi Pellegrin was completely against organic architecture as a formal thing. He was just for the concepts, and to him, a city should be something like working like an organism, and not it's not a matter of the outside look of the building. It's the way it works, and it's the way that things are put together and work together. And still talking about the relationship with nature, we thought that hydroponics and aeroponics would have been a very good way to promote the food cycle inside the built environment instead of outside. I think that we are all quite familiar with Western movies where you have those buffaloes roaming, and what's the present day situation of American prairies. No more space for buffaloes, and crops everywhere. And this is one of the other concepts that we used, and it's about once again about humans and green, but it's also about density. We are really for density, and I'm also quite familiar with Paolo Soleri's teaching, and Paolo Soleri was also very close to Frank Lloyd Wright, even though he developed something that was really completely different. But for him, density was the key. It's just like our brain. It's so dense and it's so powerful. And here you have a comparison between LA and Liberland. What you have in LA is a huge amount of population, almost 4 million inhabitants on a surface of 1,300 square kilometers with a density of 3,044 inhabitants per square kilometer. In Liberland, you have a density of 48,571,000 inhabitants per square kilometer. So the density is completely different, and at the same time, what you have, the use of the soil becomes completely different, because if we consider some of those cities that we're all familiar with, Los Angeles, Manhattan, and also now Novi Sad, which is not far from Liberland, but also Florence in Italy or Monte Carlo, you have a ratio between natural and anthropized area, which is almost similar. It's between 90 and 95% anthropized and 5% natural. And in our idea, Liberland should have been completely different. It should be the opposite, 95% green and 5% anthropized area. And then what happened when we met Mr. President in Liberland for the presentation of the competition was that we had a talk, and he told me that he would have liked to see how you would have been living inside this place. So we came up with a video. So this is what happened after meeting Mr. President, and he told me that it was he would have loved to see what this strange thing would have looked like, and so we came up with this video, and that was a while ago, and yeah, this is and the doing the video was quite interesting, because we also had the opportunity to try to see how things could have been inside. So we kept thinking about how you could move inside and how things could get more porous, and all this thing, this Liberand thing, to me is a process. Is part of the of a process. Just going back to the concepts of organic architecture, is just something that is continuously moving. So yeah, that was a good opportunity, and also to test what we liked most and what we liked less. And after that, we've been talking again with Mr. President, and he said, "Well, this thing is really huge. If we scale it down a bit?" So we came up with this idea, the Liberland seed. I don't know if it's showing now.
Right, absolutely. Yep, you're back on track. Totally.
Okay, thanks. So just
can you
back
make
to
it
the
larger?
idea. Pardon?
Can you make it larger, like full screen? It's not full screen.
Okay,
yes,
sure. I'll try.
No, no, that's good. That's good.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Yes, yes. And once again, I go back to the idea of a concept. What's really interesting to me is the idea of a concept, of this concept of freeing the nature and floating above the land, and that also brought us to floating Liberland and to floating over the Danube. Then, and that's another side part of what we're doing for Liberland. And this is what the answer to what if we scale it to 1,500 inhabitants, just to see what happens, and using recycled containers. So we just came with this idea of something that is a smaller scale version of the big one, using the same principles and using again the idea that what we put in the Danube cannot be polluted. This idea of the respect for the nature and trying to save space for the other species. And so this is a scheme of how those containers could be placed, and hydroponics and aeroponics vertical farms could be placed on top of it. And these are just a few ideas. And now I have to go back and say thanks also to Sid Mead, which is again one of my most important mentors. He is the man behind the first Blade Runner, and being a big fan of him, I just presented him my drawings, and his appreciation made me very, very happy. And then last step on this Liberand seed is one more small video. I don't know if you can see this one now.
It's working as well. You're good.
Okay, good. And once again, you have this comparison and between the different cities. And once again, what's important is to fight the sprawl. And yes, I think that density goes together with preserving the nature, and also it goes together with technology. Sometimes lately we are not, we have a fear of technology, we have fear of density, we have different feelings, but I think we should be bold enough and brave enough to fight the fear and to move towards a brighter future, because we have all these technology devices, and man is really building something on technology, but we have to think that we are not alone in this world, and that we must keep it good for other species too. And I don't think that this project is really important in itself, but what I like to push is the concept. To me, that's what really matters. And yeah, I think that's it. And I want to say thanks to all those people helping me, the team that behind the project, and Mr. President Beat for giving us the opportunity to come up with visions. Thank you.
Thank you. That was amazing. I think Luigi, the ghost of Luigi, got into the machine there for a bit. Some really interesting stuff. I really loved your Live and Let Live. You know, it's other species. We're not alone here. We need to live together. And Earth as a root, not support. Very interesting concepts. I really, really enjoyed it. How about you, Adam?
I enjoyed it as well. I think that video you played there at the end, Sergio, it's familiar. I think I've seen that before. And I think my biggest takeaway from Sergio's presentation is really kind of how everything has been painted here today. Is we're building a framework with Liberland for how we best see other nations can operate. We're kind of see ourselves as a leader, and hoping that other people take after our lead once things get going. And I think architecture, from what I've seen today, is right there with it. I mean, very innovative concepts that, as far as we can see, really haven't been implemented anywhere or very many places. And so for us to be at the forefront of technology, architecture, countless other things is just reassuring to see Sergio's presentation and the other ones that we've seen today. So I'd say that was my biggest takeaways.
And I see
I think some people joke around there, Sergio. I heard like one time it's like, oh yeah, it looks like the Jetsons or whatever. But I mean, hey, like it all starts with an idea, and you're our leader there with the others that we had on the call today on the conference.
I just see that Daniela's live. You want to say something, Daniela?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been really fascinated and super impressed with Sergio's design proposal, not just the first version he submitted to the competition, but the subsequent versions that he kept working on. He has done more work than any other architect so far in furthering his competition entry. And also, you guys should really watch his stuff online because it came through a little choppy, and it's really wonderful on YouTube. You should really watch his presentation there.
Thank you.
Sergio, I have a question.
Yes.
For the first proposal, how did you address the density issue? Because the structure that you proposed is very beautiful, very floating, and very minimal. How were you able to achieve density in that proposal?
Well, it's scale. It's those tubes are quite big. We have they are really big. So the density comes just out of scale. So this is what I meant before when I said that this time with almost 1/3 of the population that we had to house, it's gonna be easier because the issue was on density was really important. And I'm very interested in the fact that I think that we have a very similar concept behind your project and ours. Somehow are quite close on a concept level. Well, but yeah.
I mean, it is very interesting because your approach, I mean, it's obviously a valid approach, but it's a very architectural solution to an urban problem, like in my view. But I think it doesn't mean you did not create systems, but I think you created the systems within the architectural statement. And I think the development of it is quite actually interesting. Like when you really look into it, it is a kind of like you feel you could really accommodate all these things along those very large spines.
Yes, thank you. That's very interesting because those views for the inside tubes came out of something that Patrick Schumacher told during the meeting in for the presentation of the project. And I think he was a bit skeptical about our approach, mostly about the idea of living inside tubes. So it was very good to me because it gave me the occasion to think about it and to try to carve a bit those tubes and make them more porous and delve a bit more about how could be to try to make them more interesting and livelier.
Yeah, I mean, it does remind me of course, obviously the new development, but it's like the concept of inhabited bridges.
Yes.
So Raya, I just wanted to, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I wanted to actually respond to your comment that this appears to be an architectural solution. And I think the same thing happens with your proposal. It just implies an architectural solution. But I think when I look at Sergio's development, just like yours, I see potential for taking the root system, the idea, and expanding it architecturally in almost countless number of ways. So this idea of lifting the architecture off the ground, like what Sergio did, or in your case, doing an archaeology, could be applied to a completely different design system and still maintaining the underlying concept.
Yeah, it could be. It could be. It could be. It is interesting because I do see it like an architecture. Like I think it is different than my approach, though it's like, of course, it has its own merits. But I do think, Daniela, I don't see it the same way you see it. Like I think that his approach came from a position regarding like a very strong expression from the images that he shared early on, the inspiration from the images he showed. But I think in our case, the architecture was not important, honestly. Like the architecture was resultant of the strategy, honestly.
But
so it's a very different approach, I think.
I don't think so. I think it's this. I would have said the same thing about mine. I don't, because and that's why I was telling you before that I think that we're not that far, because I don't know, because it's very hard to judge your own work by yourself. But to me, what matters is really the concept, and I don't really feel the architecture as important. But I don't know. Then it's probably different when you see you see the work from the outside. But yes, to me, what's really important is the approach towards a different way of touching the ground, and I think that it's the same on you have the same approach.
Yeah, I mean, it is you know, I mean, there are people can argue this from different perspectives, but I would say the concept of you bridging over water really legitimized the approach for the people who might doubt the approach, in the sense that as the concept of inhabited bridges, they are concept of you're going from one place to another. So you are bridging across from one side to another. So there is a very major concept behind going from one side to another. So you have to bridge, and the bridge becomes habitable, where people live on the bridge, where people like shop on the bridge, you know, which I think that is what you are proposed in the subsequent one, which I think it anchors the idea of floating, I think, in an interesting way.
I want to add something to the discussion for the purposes of people who are watching, who are thinking of entering the competition. So I think one of the main differences between the two proposals, besides the fact that they present completely different approaches and systems, is the degree to which something was developed and rendered as an architectural proposal. And so when you guys are thinking about how to what degree you want to just visualize architecture, think about to what degree you want people to take it as architecture and to what degree you want people to take it as some systems concept, which can then be open to receiving architectural proposals beyond that. So I think, Sergio, one of the things that is different about yours is that it is developed architecturally a lot further, and so therefore there's kind of a barrier to thinking about it as a system. But I mean, I think both Raya and I agree on the same page that there are big merits to the system that you developed, and perhaps it could be developed by multi-authored. I mean, one of the underlying concepts of this competition is that whatever plan you offer or whatever architecture you offer can eventually be developed by a multi-author system, so that it can accept sort of collectives of designers, urbanists, etc., which is how a city usually is made. But I just wanted to point that out to people who are listening who might enter the competition, to think about that.
I think, Daniela, that's an excellent point, because I think that for Liberland, and this is, since it's a second competition, it's intended to make it buildable, and there is a contract and things is going to be built. I think it is a very valid approach is to have a system from which, you know, proposals, concepts over time will get plugged in.
Yes, absolutely. You just articulated exactly the point.